اوكي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اهلا وسهلا بكم اعزائي الطلبة في هذا اللقاء المتجدد. Yesterday we talked about the definition of translation. Today we are going to have some examples from this part, focusing upon the distinction between connotative and denotative meanings of the word in the process of translation, right? So, as we said, that the connotative meaning resides outside the dictionary domain, while the denotative is basically uh, a dictionary restricted. For example, we have some examples to show how this can be a kind of different uh, meaning. For example, we have enough is enough. If we translate it into Arabic from the denotative meaning, it would have the meaning enough, which is kafi, kafi huwa kafi, and this doesn't work. But when we go into the connotative meaning, the cultural meaning, and how this meaning is perceived by the speakers of the language and the translators, of course, we will find meaning is different here. So, for example, the connotative would be, for example, kafi, huwa kafin, which is not sufficient. But when we look into the connotative meaning, for example, we say, for example, طفح الكيل, right? So طفح الكيل has طفح الكيل here has the connotative meaning. The same applies, for example, to a girl is a girl. So a girl is a girl. When we talk about البنت هي البنت, right? البنت هي البنت, which is meaningless, right? But when we look into the connotative meaning, typically we have other dimensions for the translation. So when we say البنت هي, a girl is a girl, which means that which bears actually the cultural, the religious, as well as maybe the let's say social, the connotations of the meaning, which means that uh, a girl is a girl, which means that, for example, أننا يجب, for example, يجب أن نتفهم, يجب أن نفهم أن نفهم أن البنت لها, for example, خصوصيتها, right? This wouldn't be articulated like this, but the connotative meaning is like this. The same, of course, applies to life is life, which also has a kind of الحياة هي حياة. The meaning is not like this. A definition of الحياة is الحياة, rather than when we say الحياة يجب أن تؤخذ كما هي, right? نستمتع بها, نعطيها حقها, نكون جديين فيها, وما إلى ذلك. And also a father of a father, connotatively is different from denotatively at these different levels. So a father is a father. It doesn't mean الأب هو أب بمعنى الأب, definition of أب is الأب. Rather here the meaning is الأب له احترامه, له قدسيته, له مكانته. So here for all the 3 or 4 examples here, when you say enough is enough means the connotative level here means no tolerance at all. A girl is a girl. It has its here on privacy, here on status. Life is life. It has own features, properties, and a father is a father. He has his own decent status. He has respect, and so on and so forth. So with this, or based upon this, we can come up with the idea that connotative meaning dominates upon the mode of translation in different levels. And dear students, we will move to the notion as a part of our definition is the notion equivalence, right? Equivalence. لاحظوا dear students here, when we talk about equivalence, typically we talk about maintaining the meaning. We talk about maintaining the meaning. So, as you know, equivalence can be or is a key concept for the process of a translation. Uh, Really, as we perceive it, we cannot think of translation without taking equivalence into account or consideration, because it is a major component in the process of translation. فبالتالي it should be noted that the notion of equivalence relates to even the ordinary senses or sense levels of the verb to translate, الverb نفسه to translate, right? Here at one of its different levels is to find the notion equivalence. So this is why, in general, we are often asked to translate uh, our feelings into words and our words into actions and so on and so forth. وبالتالي the result of any act of translating revolves right around equivalence. Typically, is to find the ultimate goal is to find the equivalence, which is the major target that we are after in general. So in general, as I said, we can speak of three types of equivalence حقيقة. Uh, I'm sure that you have gone through them. The first type is the formal equivalence, right? Formal equivalence, right? The first part. The second is the so-called functional equivalence, right? And finally, we talk about ideational equivalence. These are, dear students, the three parts. Let's say these are the three parts or levels of equivalence. So here, when we talk about formal equivalence, dear students, we seek to capture the form, the form, the form of the source language. خلينا نسميها SL, the source language expression. So الform here relates to the image employed in the SL expressions, as can be illustrated by the underlined English idiomatic expressions and their underlined formal Arabic equivalence, as in, for example, for example, the following here. We say the treaty remained, has remained dead letter since then, right? The treaty has a example. Mm. The treaty has remained a dead letter since then. Okay. Um Now, if we look into the translation of this example or the sentence, maybe we will or we can come up with the following: وقد بقيت وقد بقيت المعاهدة وقد بقيت المعاهدة حرفا ميتا منذ ذلك الوقت so uh, here for example, if we look into the equivalence at this point here, we will find that the formal setting actually needs to be revisited. This also supported by other examples. So for example, when you say the example 1 خلينا نسميه example 1, right? And here we have example 2. Example 2, when we say, for example, Ali's decision to leave his job, Ali's decision to leave his job for a new one, right? Was ill thoughts, was ill thoughts, out of the frying pan into the fire, frying pan into the fire. So here, dear students, if we look into both examples, we find the following notes. So although the first example, Arabic expression حرفا ميتا, right? وحرف okay, sorry, now I'm gonna write the translation. لم يكن عفوا لم يكن okay, لم يكن قرار علي بترك وظيفته right, والشروع بأخرى حكيما كان كالقافز right, من المقلاة إلى النار, right, إلى النار. This is the literal translation for this. Now here, if we look into both translation patterns here, حرفا ميتا here, right, حرفا ميتا, right, وكالقافز إلى المقلاة من المقلاة بالنار, right. If we look into them, we find they are not يعني natural idiomatic expressions in Arabic, right? So they can be used theoretically to illustrate or to explain what is meant by the formal equivalence. But here, if we have the functional, هذا طبعا الformal, right, equivalence. So we find in a formal equivalence cannot be a kind of sufficient translation or type of translation to fulfill the actual meaning by these examples. Okay, so here functional, right? Uh, Now, if we look into the functional, okay, if we look into the functional, right? If we look into here the functional equivalence, we find the following. We find that in example, the treaty has remained dead letter. We seek to capture the function of the source language expression independently of the image used by translating it into the target language expression, وهذا performs the same function. So this can be explained by the following translation, right? By the following translation, when we say وقد بقيت المعاهدة, here instead of حرفا ميتا we say حبرا على ورق. It is a kind of a useless and insufficient uh, translation. The same, dear students, here, if we look into the translation, the same of this, we say the following. We say كالقافز كان كالقافز, right? كان كالقافز كالقافز, right? كان كالقافز من المقلاة إلى النار. طبعا here typically we can the same here كالمستجير, right? كان كالمستجير من الرمضاء كان كالمستجير من من الرمضاء بالنار, right? So here actually as a kind of functional translation, it can fulfill the equivalence at this level. It can fulfill the equivalence at this level because it captures the meaning accordingly. Uh, the last type of the last type of the last type here of equivalence is the so-called the ideational translation or the ideational level or equivalence. This level aims to convey the communicative sense. Then typically it is the communicative sense, right? Communicative sense of the source language expression independently of the function and form. That is to say, the translator seeks to relay the meaning of the source language expression regardless of the function and formal equivalence. هذا الfollowing to Arabic translation examples مثلا involving dead letter and out of the frying or out of the frying pan. Uh, Here we talk about here, for example, الفانكشنال says انه here mm, okay, example. Okay, so here وقد بقيت حبرا على ورق functionally speaking. Now ideationally speaking we say that وقد بقيت here as we said that انه away there is a kind of departure from the functional as well as the form or formal meaning. So examples like this مثلا I would say وقد بقيت المعاهدة منذ ذلك الوقت وقد بقيت المعاهدة منذ ذلك الوقت غير فاعلة, for example. وقد بقيت المعاهدة منذ ذلك الوقت غير فاعلة، آه، غير فاعلة، أو غير مفعلة وما إلى ذلك، أو تطبيق المعاهدة يعني غير مفعلة. وكمان the other example هذا اللي هو على الزسجن كمان، اللي هو كالمستجير من الرمضاء بالنار. كمان also here we have pay. مهم. كمان here we say يعني كالمستجير لم يكن قرار علي بترك وظيفتي كذا كذا بحكيما، حيث مثلا، حيث حيث سارت الأمور من سيء إلى أسوأ. من سيء إلى أسوأ. Here, dear students, when we look into the three patterns of translation here, we find that the ideational equivalence aims or targets, or aims in general, to convey the communicative sense of the source language expression away from the communicative as well as عفوا function as well as the form of that translation. وبالتالي the ultimate goal for this type of translation is to make sure that the core meaning is conveyed independently of form and meaning. So, for example, here, for example, we say a drowning man clutches at straw. A drowning man clutches at straw. Uh, Here, if we translate it into the formal, we say الغريق يتعلق بقشة, right? Maybe if we um, use the ideational translation, we say that الغريق يحاول البقاء قدر الإمكان to convey the same meaning. So here we have come through different levels of equivalence. Thank you for listening, and see you next time, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.